Hey friends, so you are probably expecting the usual Earthkeepers theme music and the boilerplate introduction. Well, this episode is going to be a little different from the norm, mostly because the only person you'll hear talking is me. Circumstances have colluded, making it necessary to do a brief solo show, which is probably a good thing because it provides an opportunity to share about some new developments concerning Earthkeepers. If you're a regular listener to this podcast, you know that I moved a couple of months ago to a log cabin on Camano Island in Washington State. It's been really great so far. Where I live now is beautiful and quiet, and I'm learning to live with the owls, deers, coyote, and tree frogs that inhabit the woods all around me. What I was not ready to contend with, though, is the severity of the storms on this island. We had one of those before Christmas, and the wind raged so hard that trees were falling everywhere, closing roads and knocking out the power, the internet, and even cell phone service for several days. In the midst of that storm, as I huddled in the dark with my dogs, I was sure one of the giant old maple trees around my house was going to smash down on my roof. As it turned out, I only lost one window to a flying tree limb, which was scary enough. Anyhow, without power or connectivity, I couldn't do my scheduled podcast interviews. But rather than skipping the episode this week, I thought it could be good to step back from the usual format of the show and to simply share about what I'm thinking as we start the 7th year of the podcast. Mostly, I want to take the opportunity to say thanks to our podcast listeners all around the world and to share with you some of the things that you can expect from Earthkeepers and from our parent organization, Circlewood, in the coming year. So here goes. First, I want to simply express my gratitude for those who take the time to engage with a podcast every couple of weeks. Producing Earthkeepers really is a key part of Circlewood's efforts to promote a more thriving, ecologically just world. This show is meant to promote the common good of all creation and to support people like you who feel the pain of a suffering planet and who want to live in ways that heal rather than harm the environment. Honestly, I deeply love hosting this podcast because it gives me opportunities to connect with other Earthkeepers around the world who are doing innovative, impactful things in the realm of Earth care. I also love feeling connected to you. I can't tell you how much it means to me, knowing that there are people like you who are listening and learning alongside me. Knowing that you're listening to the podcast is profound motivation for me to deliver challenging, encouraging, cutting-edge content every couple of weeks. And frankly, you keep me conscious of the fact that I'm not alone in this work of resistance, and that we are all part of a global community of people who want to push back against environmental exploitation and ecological indifference. And when you think about it, seeing ourselves as part of a global community with others of like heart and mind can be both encouraging and comforting, especially as we pursue the sometimes hard work of creation care. Even better, as some of you know from experience, no doubt, actually working together in community with others can make our Earth care more impactful. For that reason, Circlewood will be undertaking some new initiatives in the coming year that are meant to help you find and foster a community in the places where you live. So, for example, we'll be putting together some topical learning units that can be worked through over the course of multiple weeks. These free courses, if you will, are designed to be engaged by groups of people, either in person or virtually, to promote communities of learning and personal growth. Of course, you can work through these resources just on your own as well, but our deep hope is that we can promote the gathering of community groups that not only promote mutual learning, but also inspire and encourage people in the sometimes lonely work of creation care. Of course, it goes without saying that the impact of this new endeavor depends a lot on you. We want to equip Earthkeepers podcast listeners, as well as the readers of our online journal called The Ecological Disciple, to gather small groups of interested people around these learning opportunities. So here's my challenge for you. As you think about your own Earthkeeping goals for the new year, please do consider the possibility of organizing an Earthkeepers learning group and be thinking of people in your community who would be interested in being part of such a learning experience. We hope to release our first topical guide in the first quarter of this year, centered around the theme of Earthkeeping values that we can learn from Indigenous people. So stay tuned for more information in the coming weeks. Another new project in the works that might interest you is what will in effect be a new podcast, one that we're calling Edgewalkers. This is a kind of passion project for me because as the father of a 23-year-old, I've witnessed firsthand how she and so many of her generation don't see relevance in the church community or in faith practices in the Jesus tradition. And of course, we all know plenty of people in the older generations, including me if I'm being honest, who have drifted away from the conventional church as an organization, yet still hold fast to their faith and their love of God. This concerning situation has motivated me personally to create a podcast that explores why so many people are turning away from traditional church. More importantly, the Edgewalkers podcast will focus on some of the new, radically creative, courageously innovative experiments that offer new hope for those of us who still yearn to practice our faith life and community in fresh and relevant ways. The plan for the moment is to create a limited standalone series. I'm thinking like maybe 6 episodes, all released in fairly quick succession. So if you're interested in that particular topic, watch for the launch of the Edgewalkers podcast later in the year. And hey, if you've got suggestions about who I need to talk to for this podcast, please shoot me an email at forrest.inslee@circlewood.online. On a more personal note, 2026 is going to be a year of deep learning for me as I pursue a relationship with the 2 acres of forest where I now live. As I said earlier, I moved recently to Camano Island in order to be closer to my work with Circlewood and to the 40 acres of woodland that we as an organization have taken care of for many years. Much of my focus in 2026, though, will be on finding my place in the particular ecology of the 2 acres where I now live. Already, I'm becoming aware of the past wounds of this forest and the present suffering here caused by climate change. As I figure out how to love and restore this bit of woodland that I'm committing myself to, I'll be looking for ways to share both my successes and my setbacks in case any of you want to follow along on my learning journey. My hope ultimately is that the things I discover and the ways that I'm challenged to grow might provide some encouragement for those of you in the broader Earthkeepers community who are seeking to live better with the places where you live. So, I know that's a lot of new stuff in the works. I think part of me hopes that by saying these aspirations out loud, I'll feel more compelled to actually do them. So feel free to hold me accountable. I will say too, though, that frankly, I am a little bit nervous about taking on these kind of gnarly new goals because I don't want to be distracted from the normal work of producing the Earthkeepers podcast itself. Do know, though, that this really is the work I love best these days, and my promise to you is that I won't compromise our core goals and values. Indeed, I intend that the podcast will only get better in the coming year, and you can rest assured that I and the rest of the production team will continue to encourage, inspire, and educate folks as they strive to be good relatives in the family of creation. To that end, I am really feeling some new motivation about the podcast as I look ahead to season 7. In order to keep the podcast both interesting and challenging for you, I'll be looking to explore new topics in light of these pretty profound challenges that we're facing these days. What I mean by that, and I guess there's no safe and sanitized way to say this, so bear with me, is that we're in an environmental crisis mode as the health of our planet is becoming much worse and the climate is changing much faster than had been predicted. In light of this, I'm coming to realize that if I'm going to do this podcast from a place of honesty and integrity, I'm going to have to be more forthright about the anger and sadness I sometimes feel, even as I try to find reasons to be hopeful as well. For me, being more honest will mean asking more edgy and difficult questions in future episodes. For example, what does it mean for Americans to push back against the disastrous environmental policy decisions of the current administration? Trump's policies are killing us, friends. He is enabling the worst parts of human nature, encouraging selfish exploitation of our environment, and speeding up the pace of climate change and ecological decimation. I saw a meme recently that said something like this: imagine how it will feel to wake up 3 years from now when Trump will no longer be president. Well, that struck me in 2 ways. First, I realized that I have become resigned to the fact that I just need to hold on for 3 more years and then we can somehow get back on track towards living as a greener nation. The second thing, though, that I thought was, how have I come to the point of personal compromise that justifies that kind of passivity and dismisses the righteous anger and despair I feel for the sake of creation? I mean, really? We're just supposed to wait 3 years and stand by as as clean energy is demonized and protected public lands are given over to mining and fossil fuel extraction, sorry, but I'm getting to a place where I have no choice but to fight back, because I believe that all human beings were created to care for the rest of creation, to defend it, give voice to it, and stand against those who only want to dominate it. The current pace and scale of ecological destruction right now means that we have to find ways to stand up to environmental injustice and speak truth to power. These are desperate times that call for desperate measures. We can never let ourselves become content and complacent simply by making little tweaks to our shopping or recycling habits and calling that good. But what does effective resistance look like? How can we live true to our calling as human beings to take a stand in defense of creation? Well, honestly, I have to admit that I don't have a lot of good answers right now, but I am hoping to help us figure that out through Season 7 of the Earthkeepers podcast. Everything in me, especially the angry and sad parts, is driving me to ask, what more can we do? What are the more profound, systemically and socially impactful kinds of actions that we can take in order to live out our calling as caretakers? And how do we muster the courage to take the risks that radical action sometimes requires? Let me give you an example of the kinds of hard, real-world questions I think this podcast could be asking more of. If you're a parent or grandparent, what more could we be doing to sensitize our children to the suffering of creation and build into them the courage to challenge the status quo with their very lives? Or if you're a young person hoping to become a parent, how should you be thinking about bringing children into a world where climate change is quickly making it way more difficult to survive and thrive? Here's another question that I don't have a good answer for. In the realm of public discourse, how are we not taking a hard and honest look at the overpopulation of the planet as a primary cause of ecological destruction? We passed the 8 billion mark in late 2022, and we're projected to reach around 9.8 billion people in 2050. Our world's resources are limited, but we're sucking the planet dry, decimating whole ecologies and pushing countless species into extinction, all to make room and provide resources for more and more people. Why aren't we talking about that more, much less doing something about it? If this podcast is going to be truly useful to anyone, we've got to be asking the harder questions and speaking up about the harder truths. And probably that might mean losing some of our current listeners. I hope, though, that by becoming a more honest and fundamentally challenging podcast, we might actually bring in more listeners to the Earthkeepers community. Listeners who already know that we could be doing so much more in the defense and protection of creation. Earthkeepers needs to be asking the harder questions, and I'm going to do my best to ask them, but also to find clever and experienced podcast guests to help us find answers and inspire us to action. And if you have a particular question that's burning in you, or if you know people we should have on the show, definitely let me know about them. So, thanks for letting me speak my heart and mind. More than ever in these crazy days, I need to feel like I'm standing with others who care as much as I do. Please do reach out and let me know what you're thinking. There are different ways to do that, of course, from the Earthkeepers website. I'm glad that we're in this together, friends, and I am a better Earthkeeper because of you. I hope you'll be able to say the same as this new season unfolds. So here we go.